if you can hear. Hopefully they're not too loud. Okay.
Okay, and we have a quorum, so that's great. And welcome to the guests. And I know that we're going to be hearing from a couple of you. And the proponent, are you wanting to speak, or are you, Cam, are you?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I don't
point
have
of
a
access.
public comment to make, but
Okay.
I am available to answer any questions or join the discussion as you see fit.
Okay, great.
Sorry,
Okay, so first
point
of
of
all,
access?
approval of the agenda. Does someone, it has changed. We did have on it the election of a chairman going forward, but that's been delayed. So until next time, does someone want to move that the agenda be accepted?
Sorry, before we do, this is Councillor Jurgensen. I just can't rename myself in the meeting. I just wanted to let you guys know I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay. Someone move for the agenda be, okay, thanks, Brenda, and second. Okay, Betty, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carried. And the minutes, did everyone have a chance to read them? And if you did, is everyone okay with them? If someone wants to move.
Move to accept the minutes.
Okay, thanks, Richard. You, and seconded. Richard D. Okay, and all in favor? Okay, great. That is carried. And now we have one referral today, and I think,
sorry, we would normally move into public comments to
oh,
begin
public
with.
comments. Okay, yeah, okay.
So I have two that have registered. I have Anne Frank de Ferrier and Margaret Underhill, and I have a timer, so we could go for 3 minutes each, if that suits you, Kirsty.
Yeah, that's great. And
Okay,
okay, is there any? Are you worried about who goes first, Anne and Margaret?
Well, Anne was first in with the request, but if it's yeah. So Anne, are you happy to go first?
Okay, I have submitted a letter, and this is just a verbal comment. My name is Anne Frank de Ferrier Chola, and I live at 1425 West Side Road. I am a retired registered professional geoscientist and a retired registered on-site wastewater practitioner. This rezoning application for 1355 West Side Road is a textbook example of a cart being put in front of the horses. You have a cart full of Boyne Islanders clamoring for the installation of 34 tiny homes at 1355 West Side Road. I beg to ask, where is the water coming from? Water to flush the toilets into the proposed septic system. Pollution of any source of drinking water is not allowed, especially of the existing deep well that presently provides drinking water to 4 existing dwellings. The proposed project needs 10 times the present amount of drinking water, and the well is not plotted on the site plan provided in this application, so it cannot be protected from any source of pollution. The outcome of any drilling program is very uncertain and can turn out to be prohibitively expensive. I fully support the staff recommendation that the applicant demonstrate sufficient drinking water for each and every one of the dwellings planned for 1355 West Side Road. I will stay on standby to answer any question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And next we have Margaret, and I'll just reset the timer to start now.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Underhill. Myself and my husband live at 1405 West Side Road. I hope you've had the opportunity to review the submission we sent yesterday, and I would just like to briefly recap our most important points. Land Use Bylaw Section 332 prohibits manufactured home parks. The planner's report describes staff research into manufactured homes and modular homes before reaching the conclusion that this proposed development would not meet the prohibited definition of a manufactured home park. We feel that this conclusion is flawed. Bylaw 3.3 prohibits various uses of property, and the definition of use refers to the intended purpose or activity, not to the specifics of structures on the property. Bylaw 3.3 does not prohibit manufactured homes, it prohibits manufactured home parks. In our opinion, this bylaw is applicable to the proposed development at 1355 West Side Road. Population density. There are currently approximately 40 residents of the West Side Laura Road portion of Sunset Park Estates, including the existing rentals at 1355 West Side Road. We estimate that the total number of residents at the proposed West Side Village, not including the residents of the 4 existing rental units, would be on the order of 81. This would more than triple the current neighborhood population. And finally, the restrictive covenant on 1355 West Side Road. The 1985 Bowen zoning map shows the undeveloped Sunset Park Estates property as 2 large blank areas totaling some 200 acres, with the zoning designation being CWSP, or Community Water Supply Protection, and that was included as an attachment with our letter. In 1986, after the first 14 lots of Sunset Park Estates had been created, a restrictive covenant was entered into between the developer and the government. This covenant set out minimum lot sizes, 5 and 10 acres, for the rest of the subdivision, and set a limit on the total number of lots that could be created from the remainder of the as yet unsubdivided property, effectively prohibiting further subdivision and protecting the community water supply. 1355 West Side Road is bound by this covenant. In 2007, the previous owner requested that this covenant be discharged so they could apply to subdivide. The council of the day declined that request. While the applicant in the current application is not seeking to legally subdivide the property, his intent to add 34 modular homes to the property would have the same effect as subdividing into multiple smaller lots. Increased density, increased water usage, less room for wildlife, and potential negative effects on the Grafton Lake watershed. The proposed development at 1355 West Side Road is too intensive, too dense, does not allow nature its fair share of the property, and is ill-suited to the neighborhood. At the absolute minimum, this application should be deferred until the current OCP review has been completed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And that's it for comments. Is it, Sarah?
I believe so, unless anybody. I think
Okay,
that's it.
great. Okay, well, I guess it's over to you, Daniel. You've done a lot of work on this, and there's a lot more, I'm sure, to go.
Okay, I'll just start my screen sharing. There we go. All right. So we have a council referral for an application at 1355 West Side Road. You've just heard from some of the neighbors the project, but there is it located, just for context. So on West Side Road, opposite almost the intersection with Laura Road, and then sort of one property behind Adams Road. Does it work? Just a view of our typical rezoning and OCP amendment process. So the application was introduced to council October 14th. It's been referred to committees, including this one. And then this outlines sort of the steps that the application would take. Overview of the official community plan for the site. It's designated as RS, Rural Residential. And I've picked out 2 of the policies there just to include. So low building density is encouraged, except that cluster housing is favored, provided it does not detract from the rural character of the area and the overall building density of the area is maintained. And then policy 140 calls for an average parcel size of 1 hectare or 2.5 acres. And then I've as well highlighted just some other OCP policies we have, including housing policies. So objective 152 says it wants to provide for, an objective is to provide for a range of housing types and tenures on Bowen within the overall context of the spirit and intent of the OCP. And policy 358 talks about housing types on Bowen, and it says outside of Snug Cove Village, The following types of housing are supported: detached homes and detached homes with a secondary suite, or detached secondary suite, small scale social housing, affordable housing, co-housing may be considered, subject to other policies of this OCP. And policy 367 speaks to the majority of affordable and special needs housing should be located within Snug Cove Village. If any other location is proposed, it will be easily accessible to public transit. And then in terms of what the zoning on the site currently allows in our land use bylaw, the site is currently zoned rural residential 3, a fairly typical rural residential zone on Bowen. It allows for dwelling, agriculture, stable, and kennel. It has accessory uses allowed, such as accessory residential use, which is a secondary suite or a detached secondary suite. Allows residential guest accommodation and mini storage, and has an overall lot coverage of 1,500 square meters. The proposed development in the application is to amend the zoning and the OCP designation to permit the development of 34 modular homes on the western side of the property. And the image here is that proposed site plan showing those 34 homes. The applicant intends for these to be rented home sites where tenants would construct their homes on the property and pay a monthly fee for the land to the applicant. The applicant would act as developer to create the needed infrastructure on the property. And the intent is for the homes to be modest in size, so 1 to 2 bedroom with a maximum floor area that would be established in the zoning. And then I'm going to go through some of the pieces that I talk about in the staff report to council. So in terms of water, the applicant is proposing to serve the development through groundwater. And that report to council has, and on our website, we have the letter of intent from the water engineer who's been engaged by the applicant. And so I note in the report, we'd recommend that through this application process, we would require the applicant to follow section 6.19 of our land use bylaw to demonstrate sufficient water for the proposed dwellings. And then in terms of septic, the proposal is to service wastewater with on-site septic. And so as we do with all applications, we referred this to Vancouver Coastal Health, who regulate septic fields on Bowen. And they referred the application to the Ministry of Environment and Parks for review, because in essence, the proposal would have 2 parallel septic fields servicing the development, and each of those septic fields is under the limit that's set out in the sewerage system regulation, but combined, the total flow for the development would exceed that limit. And so Vancouver Coastal Health and the Ministry of Environment in those cases have a sort of a guiding policy that says those get referred to the Ministry of Environment and Parks for review, because they may be regulated under a stricter regulation, which is the municipal wastewater regulation. And we will update when we hear back from that referral. And then talking specifically to some municipal policies. So we have a policy that's the conservation development policy. And as part of the application, the applicant is to provide an environmental report that provides analysis of existing natural features and environmentally sensitive areas present on the proposed development site. And that is included in my report, highlights some of those environmentally sensitive areas. The total area of them would be approximately 20% of the overall site. And so at a minimum, staff would recommend these be protected by restrictive covenants, such as a condition of the rezoning. And then an affordable housing policy, which calls for 15% of development to be governed by housing agreements that would ensure affordability. And the applicant is supportive entering into a housing agreement for the proposed new dwellings on the property. And council referred this application as well to Birch, so Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Society, where we have a partnering agreement with for recommendation on the affordability of the proposed development. Next one, just our OCP designates desired trail connections. And so there is a desired trail connection across this site to connect West Side Road to Adams Road. And so the applicant proposes a trail across the property, and staff would support that trail connection. If there can be a way that avoids sensitive areas and respects neighbors' privacy. And then finally, in bringing this to the APC, I know this is a quite a more significant application than we normally see. And what we would recommend is scheduling a site visit of the property and then coming back to this committee, maybe at your next meeting, to look for recommendations from this committee to council, so that you have time to sort of have a meeting to get answers to questions and engage in the application, but then actually see it on site and come back at a future meeting to make a recommendation. But you are, of course, free to instead make a recommendation at this meeting. And I'll say we met with the Parks Environment and Climate Action Committee last week, and they would be on a similar schedule. So we're looking to schedule a site visit with them, and potentially we could do a combined site visit of committees. But at that point, I think I'll stop sharing and open it up for questions. Brenda?
Okay.
Or-
Great.
I have a question.
That was, you packed a lot into a few slides, so.
Sorry, yes.
No, that was great, because we did have a lot to read, and I guess the last page was probably something that we should talk about right away if we want to take that recommendation, and we'll talk today, but also before we prepare our final recommendations, that we do go for a site visit, and then make our recommendations after another meeting. How do you all feel about that? Richard, you?
I would be very much in favor of a site visit. Actually, I have so many questions about this proposal. I think I would benefit. I think we would all benefit from seeing it ourselves. If we could do that in conjunction, as Daniel has just said, with the Trail Committee, was it Daniel?
Yeah, they're the Parks Environment Climate Action Committee.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in favor. And
Okay. Anyone else want to
Yeah, I
comment?
would be in favor of it as well.
Okay.
Visit.
Okay, that seems to be a unanimous decision then, that we'll delay our final recommendations, but I think that probably it would be worthwhile, because these site visits, there's sort of one-on-one discussions and talking, but we don't have a chance to get together and talk. That maybe it'd be worthwhile for us to talk about some of the issues today. Is that? We'll go
Yeah, I
forward
think I
and-
would recommend that. And then even, then the committee as a whole can flag what they want to focus on the site visit.
Great. Okay, everyone's okay with that. When I was reading it earlier, I thought, okay, this is a complex thing. It's a big change. And I thought that before we leapt into discussion, that we might want to divide it into sort of I'd pick three separate sort of discussion topics, so that we can, I guess, make some cogent recommendations. We're not going to be making the recommendations today, but I'll give you this as a thought, that we sort of divided into three issues, which I had set up as sort of infrastructure issues, which is septic and water and roads and things like that we would maybe have some recommendations on. Then there's the location, the environmental impact, and the neighborhood, how that fits in. That's a sort of another section. And three, which is probably the biggest one, which is the style, type of development, and both meeting Bowen's needs, and how are we how comfortable are we with changing the OCP and the land use bylaw. So does that, comments? Okay. Because
Yeah.
I
I think we'll have additional categories as we go, and some
think-
issues don't fit clearly that I, can think of, don't fit clearly into any of those.
Okay. So do you want to add some on now, or do you shall we
Well,
kick
yeah.
off and see how we go?
doesn't matter, but I guess the big issue for me, I would classify as a timing issue. Like the appropriateness of considering a change of this magnitude when we have an open OCP review process, and given how many different policies of the OCP are engaged with this development. So I kind of think about that as a timing issue. But maybe that's captured under type of development.
Yeah, well, I think it is an important thing, and it's been brought up in the presentation. Do we suggest that it waits until? But then if the new OCP is in, and they need to have this as input, probably to think about when they're developing the OCP, the new one. So, okay, Richard D.
Thanks, Kirsty. Sort of on the same topic, I think that there are conflicting needs here. There are people who really are looking to have accommodation and really would appreciate accommodation. So I think to say, well, we're gonna have to defer this for 2 years is, there's maybe another side to it as well. But I'd like to say on the subject of neighborhood impacts, I think the impact on the neighborhood is just profound. It's people are living their lives, their ordinary lives, and suddenly, boom, there's this development that's totally going to change the character of their lives in their neighborhood. So, I mean, I think one way that we could look at this is in terms of an inequality issue. I think maybe another way that you could look at it as well. If there's somebody coming in and they're applying to increase density hugely on one lot, but the neighborhood as a whole won't. There are too many other issues that need to be resolved for that to be a fair approach. The first person takes everything and everybody else gets nothing. So, I think one way of looking at this, one way that Daniel might consider this, is what sort of OCP amendment could we approve now, which we would be able to approve for all of the properties on that neighborhood. In other words, what would be an acceptable total increase in population of that neighborhood divided among all of the parcels, and then that's what we can do now. And a very radical increase in density is something that has to wait on the OCP. So if there are 7 parcels and there are we can increase the population by, or the total we can increase the population by 80, then we would allow 10 new dwelling units on this property, and then that's it for now. My opinion.
Betty?
I really appreciate that perspective, Richard. I was also thinking about the neighborhood and that original covenant that was put in place in one part because they were already recognizing there were water limitations, but it was also a covenant not to create their properties as investment that they could later subdivide, but to create a rural environment where they were going to farm and have horses. To me, it's you put a covenant, you believe in it, and this proposal for me is like it's come up with a way to get around the covenant and trick everybody, basically, and it feels deceitful and dishonest. And I hate to say that because I don't disagree with the tiny home concept, and I've seen a tiny home village that was fantastic, but it's that neighborhood and the intention that it was a traditional rural residential lot, and we're doing something that's basically like putting an apartment building on that site. It's greatly increasing the density. And the other question I have is I don't actually see it as any longer a residential use. I see it as a business use, that I'm going to create these 34 lots and rent them. And to me, that's a business. And is that right now inside our OCP an approved type of business for a rural residential lot?
Okay, Richard, you?
I was also wondering about the covenant that's in place. I think the reason for the covenant was, in addition to water supply, the recognition of this being a really special area on Bowen for groundwater recharge and water supply to Grafton Lake. It's a coincidence maybe that last meeting we learned about the importance of this area when we were considering the subdivision of lot number 7 on Adams Road. And I've since reread Bob Turner and Rosemary Knight's submission to council about just how important the community water supply protection is and how critical this area is. So there's a municipal covenant in place. And then, Daniel, you mentioned something about perhaps another covenant for the 20% of the area that you have identified as being of special significance on this lot itself. Can you explain how those two covenants would work in tandem?
Sure. So that would be a covenant under our conservation development policy that calls for protection of calls for identification and protection of environmentally sensitive areas with a goal to protect up to 50% of a property through a rezoning. And so the applicant has provided an environmental report that identifies the environmentally sensitive areas, and they take about 20 to 30% of the property are within those areas. And so that's why the report says at a minimum, we would seek that those be protected through a covenant through any rezoning of the property.
That's 20%, but the objective is to covenant 50% of the lot.
Correct. And then that conservation development policy says essentially that let me try to find the exact wording here. But essentially it speaks to a goal of a minimum of 50%. So not maximum, but the policy then speaks to council may essentially balance that with weighing other priorities. And so the applicant has pointed to that, essentially saying they intend to provide 100% of the development to be affordable housing, so to exceed the targets in the affordable housing policy, and in balance to that, to not achieve the 50% goal.
Okay. The zoning allows for 1,500 square meters maximum coverage currently. I'm not really good at converting, but what is the equivalent of 34 modular home sites in square meters?
Let me just pull up the site plan.
And that 1,500 square meter maximum coverage would also apply to the existing dwellings on the property, I would expect.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why we need the land use bylaw change, the OCP changed, because it is definitely a change to zoning.
Mm-hmm. And then, is there another business use on this particular property?
There is a mini storage business.
So the mini storage business is on the same lot.
Yeah, let me just pull up the site plan in a little more detail. Sorry. All right. Do you see this site plan? So this is West Side Road. There's an existing
Mhm.
driveway in here. There's two existing driveways on the property. This is the second one that comes in here that comes
Oh,
essentially
okay.
to this back side of the property, and this is the existing mini storage business.
Right.
And then these are proposed, and then these dark shaded buildings are existing on site. So the ones with the black outlines and the numbers, those are the proposed modular homes. But in contrast, these ones are existing buildings on the site. And then this is sort of the proposed site plan. So identifies the area of the site, the 10 acres, and outlines existing building coverage in square feet. Try to again. 34 dwelling sites.
We're jumping
54
from
parking
square
zones.
meters to square feet here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. So this has proposed total coverage of 27,000 square feet, which is it's about 2,500 square meters.
Okay. And again, that takes into account the existing dwellings.
Yes, existing dwellings, existing buildings on site.
We're zoned for 1,500 square meters and we're looking at 2,500 square meters.
Yeah,
And is
correct.
the mini storage is also included in there. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
included.
I just didn't know how to interpret those numbers. I did read somewhere that somewhere along the line, someone built structures on the property that were non-conforming or
Non-permitted?
non-permitted.
Well, not permitted. They didn't get permits.
How did that come to be?
The Wild West.
Yeah.
It wasn't, yeah. It was a long time ago, I'm guessing.
Before
Yeah.
we were municipality, I think.
Oh, going that far back.
Yes,
Like
nothing's new.
we don't have any like records on the property of there aren't records of non-compliance. There just aren't, but they were built as far as we can tell without permits and exceeding the zoning or converted at some point. So there are 4 dwellings on the site that were present when the applicant purchased the property. So they do exceed the zoning as currently.
They're already in
Yes.
non-compliance, I guess. Okay. Okay, thanks. Those are just some questions.
Great, thanks, Richard. Brenda.
Thanks. So I guess I have a couple of observations and a question. To me, it seems like what struck me as I was reading through this, I think Richard mentioned it as well, was that this was immediately adjacent to Lot 7, which we discussed at our last meeting. And we discussed that being a high recharge area for Grafton Lake. And with this proposal, the statistic that I think I saw was an estimated 34,000 liters per day of material going to the septic fields that are on the property. And because last time we were talking about this, the recharge value of the property, it just strikes me as there being potential for contamination to be flushed into that area, both overland as well as through the groundwater system. And I guess I'm just really hesitant. Like, to me, this seems like it would probably be the biggest single septic installation in the Grafton Lake watershed. So, I'd want a lot of reassurance that there wasn't the potential for this to cause any contamination to the lake, particularly because of the permeability of that area. And how much water is capable of moving through it quickly into the groundwater system. So I'm worried about that. And I think that, in our recommendations, I would want to suggest that issue deserves some real scrutiny before the development could be approved. Septic fields can go on for many years, and many of us, including myself, are crossing my fingers that my field is going to be lasting well into the future. The overland aspect of contamination that I mentioned is with respect to Murray Creek, which flows into Bowen Brook, which leads into Grafton Lake. So there is a link overland as well that I think we need to be cognizant of. So as for my question, when we were, Daniel, when you were going through your presentation and talking about water, you mentioned that the proponent would need to prove water before getting any building permits for the development. And I'm just wondering, why is it left to that later stage? Why would the proponent not be required to prove water even before the land gets rezoned? Because if there ultimately isn't enough water, then presume the rezoning might not even have been necessary. So I'm just wondering if there is any sort of leeway to require water to be proved earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my presentation said through this application process, and then prior to, like, as a full stop prior to any building permits issued.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think through the rezoning process, we would want to see that demonstrated, like, prior to approval. So it is always sort of that discussion when's appropriate. So,
Right.
I think thinking is, well, if it comes to council and council had said initially, or says when the referrals come back, actually we want to wait for an OCP process. What's the expectation? So it's clear that demonstration of water has to happen prior to this completing, but it's sort of how far along the line is it okay leaving that as a question that needs to be demonstrated? So sort of for fairness for the applicant to know that it's being considered and wanting to, move through the process at this point.
Okay, Betty, and then Richard D.
Sorry, I can't find my unmute. To me, it's one part proving the water, but will there also be a requirement to document the impact of testing the water on the subject lot against possible drawdown on adjacent wells in the neighborhood?
Well, I think that's, I think what we seem to be moving towards is a bunch of questions, and Richard, not to cut you off, or Betty, but Sarah, maybe can you, instead of packaging things for recommendations, package things for what are our big questions, and then that'll help us move forward. And then when we go on our walk around, and some of the things might be answered, some of the things we're going to get answers for, but at least we'll know what our big questions are. And then maybe that will, they'll flow through into recommendations.
Do you want me to bring up a screen and we can put them together
as
a group?
Does that work for, because we seem to be getting some good questions, and then let's capture them, because otherwise it's just discussion and I'm seeing as we're not making recommendations. Okay.
Christy, can I just speak to Betty's question?
Yeah.
Just because I have, so in my presentation and report, I referenced section 6.19 of the land use bylaw, and that's because that's the clause we use in subdivisions, which says essentially an applicant needs to provide to the municipality a certification from an engineer with experience in groundwater that there is enough water to meet the proposed use, and that's where it gives a table of how much water each use requires, and they need to certify that it won't that the extraction of that amount of water or diversion from a spring will not adversely affect the quality or quantity of potable water or water supply for fire protection from any existing well, spring, or surface water, or lead to saltwater intrusion into the groundwater table. So when calling for that section, that's what we're calling for, is then that like an engineer can certify that there is enough water and that taking that much water does not impact existing wells.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, maybe and the questions, if we can start off maybe with the water and septic concerns. And so Daniel's answered that question. Is that okay as an answer for you, Betty, and for the others? Okay, so
Kirsty, I have some other comments about water and septic.
Okay, Richard.
They're more comments than questions. The with respect to septic, I haven't said much, but my understanding, my position, my understanding of this, from looking at the water quality testing results, is that the real issue with water contamination into Grafton is the forever chemicals. It's not the sewage, unless these are incredibly badly designed septic fields and septic systems, and there's sewage running down Terminal Creek. That's not the issue. And wherever we have development, wherever we put more people, there are going to be just a lot more forever chemicals running into Grafton Lake. On the matter of water supply, one of the things, I did mention for the Lot 7 development, firefighting water, and for this one, there's a recommendation to, well, CAM has agreed to sprinkler the buildings, but I want to say just with respect to sprinklering, the water demand for sprinklering is going to be 2 heads for 7 minutes, which is very little. It means, you can easily sprinkler a house, but there's not a huge demand. Really, there is another matter that hasn't been discussed here and doesn't come up because there's no subdivision and these are all small buildings, so all the requirements for firefighting water that would normally be applied to large buildings just doesn't come up. So I mean, I guess that is a question. With respect to water, there is no provision for actual firefighting water. When the fire department arrives there, they're not going to have the amount of water they have from a hydrant to put out fires in the forest, that go from the building to the forest, or go from, or even to put out a building, because 2 sprinkler heads for 7 minutes is not going to put out a fire in a building. So anyway, sorry, that's very technical stuff, and I apologize.
Maybe we can just start putting some things down, Sarah. Sorry, I've lost your view, but so fire, Richard, you're concerned about
firefighting water, yeah.
Okay.
Just different to sprinkler water, yeah.
Because I think that some of these things are answered through the process, but we might as well capture them. Brenda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I do think that a concern about the volume of material going into the septic fields should be noted. I know that Richard thinks the real issue is forever chemicals. I think E. coli is important, and I do think that it should be registered because, this is a very large septic system. And it is in one of the most sensitive areas within the Grafton Lake watershed.
Yeah, I know that septic systems have certainly come a long way in the last years, and some of the ones on many of the houses around Bowen wouldn't cope with septic, but the new ones do. Richard, you?
Yeah, in reading the submission from Anne, I think it's Anne Frank de Ferrier, one of the neighbors. The design, what I took from that was that the design of the septic systems is related to the location of the wells. There's one well on the property currently, but there would have to be several more drilled, according to her analysis, and that you can't even begin to design a septic field until you know where those wells are, because they have to be a certain distance apart. So I think the first obvious question is there enough water? And that has to be proven somewhere in the process. And where will these wells be drilled? And then from that, it would be determined what type of septic system would be required and where the fields would be located.
Yeah, so these are sort of technical, more of the technical side of land use change. The water, the fire, the septic, and the process to figure out what needs to be done and who's going to monitor that. That's really what we're talking about in this issue?
Yeah.
Okay, is that enough for us on this area, or is there more to add?
I think, yeah.
Brenda.
Sorry, I don't really have any other issues, I don't think, with respect to the water at this point, but this is only our preliminary discussion. So if we all think of more, we can talk about it at the next meeting. I thought I heard Daniel saying something. I didn't read every piece of material that we were provided with in advance of this meeting. There was a lot there. And so forgive me if this is in the material somewhere. But the conservation covenant that we were talking about, and the conservation policy that specifies a minimum of 50%. When Daniel was talking about that, Daniel, I thought I heard you say that some environmentally sensitive areas have been identified. And my question is, I'm assuming that those environmentally sensitive areas are along the two creeks, along Murray Creek, and I think the other one is Peggy's Creek. Are those environmentally sensitive simply because they're adjacent to the creeks? Are there any species of concern that are in there? Are there any sensitive environmental areas for other reasons? Any comments about that, or do we know yet?
Brenda, yeah, I'd like to say if you read just one document from what was sent to us, it's the revised environmental impact study.
Okay, thank you.
It's really, really good and comprehensive.
Thank you, Richard.
And just to add that to that, so it highlights Murray Creek and Peggy's Creek, and it highlights a small wetland in the southwestern corner of the property. If I can just, Sarah, if I can share screen, maybe I'll just. So this is in this updated environmental report. So it's showing Murray Creek on this side of the property line. So the blue is showing the full 30-meter riparian area, I think, and then the green is because the environmentalists did the stream protection enhancement area, so identified that sensitive area for Murray Creek on this side, showing Peggy Creek riparian setback and setback from this water feature in the neighbor's property. And then here, I think it's a little hard to pick up on the screen maybe, but the green wetland area in this corner of the property. And then down in here is well a setback from those wetlands on that property to the south.
Okay.
Kirsty, if I may make another comment.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll
Richard.
stop there.
I noticed the storage are in that proposed wetland area. And
Are they, Daniel?
yeah. Oh, I
Um,
wanted, there was the other question I have was how does any of this impact if the existing buildings don't comply for use and density, which I didn't think of before, then how does the Local Government Act use and density provisions
I think that's why we're
how, if at all, do they apply to us looking at this development if use and density doesn't comply right now?
So first I'll just share, this is another one that the applicant shared before the Parks and Environment Committee. So this is the same map from the applicant, except with the without the watershed background, instead with the ortho background. So just showing the wetland in this corner of the property, and then showing where the existing mini storage and existing buildings are.
Okay.
And Daniel, is that a vernal wetland or does it stay wet throughout the year?
When the environmental report just identifies it as a small wet depression with some hydrophytic vegetation and wetland hydrology.
I also read somewhere that I think that both of those creeks were fish bearing. Is that correct?
They're both identified as tributary to fish bearing.
Tributary to fish bearing. Okay. That makes more sense.
Because they flow into Bowen Brook.
With the potential for fish to go up there.
Mm-hmm.
Martin.
So they're both, yeah.
Do you have anything to add, or you've been very silent?
Well, yeah, I'm just kind of waiting for the subject matter to shift a little bit towards the built form.
Okay, great.
I do have a question, if you will, but I can wait for that.
Okay.
Time.
So Sarah, do we have a range of sort of questions on what I consider a sort of the technical side of things, the water and septic and?
Yeah, so this is what I've come up with for you guys so far. So around the water and the septic, I said, are there provisions for water to be used for fire suppression / sprinkler water? What is the projected volume of the material going into the water system, e.g. forever chemicals or E. coli? Is there enough water? Where will the wells be drilled? What kind of septic systems would be required and where would the field be located? What needs to be done and who is going to monitor it? Are the creeks environmentally sensitive? Are there species of concern? Are there sensitive environmental areas for other reasons?
Okay, great. And I think some of those, Daniel, you have answers to, and some of them are things that we're going to want to look into further and make recommendations on. Is that fair?
And Kirsty, could I just ask another question? If the existing use and density doesn't comply with zoning, then how do the use and density provisions in the Local Government Act apply to us looking at a project where use and density doesn't comply anyway?
Yeah, I think we're not looking at history. We're looking at asking for a change, and the buildings are included in the request, the current development. So we would be the council would be looking at the whole project, not just the new portion of it, and that all has to fit together.
It's possible. Daniel, do you agree with that? You know, the use and density.
Yeah, I would agree with, I think that's a good summary.
So it's like we're starting at ground zero and looking forward. And asking for permission for the whole thing is what.
It just says if use and density don't comply, then you can't increase the non-compliance. But I guess if it's a rezoning, it's not a non-compliance. Okay.
Yeah, you're thinking of existing non-conforming like use provisions. Yeah. So this would be different because council would be changing the zoning.
Okay.
So are you comfortable now, Richard?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay, well, maybe go into the next I can call a section on it is sort of the environmental concerns, the impact on the neighborhood, which a couple of people already have commented on, and I can't remember who had, I guess, the impact on the neighborhood. Somebody had some questions on or had packaged it together.
I think I have a question around that area.
Okay,
around
Martin.
this line of thinking. So I guess my question is for the proponent, as to what is prompting them to consider this particular site as the right location for a project of this magnitude, especially a housing project, where the current OCP suggests that would be best served in the Cove. Given access to transit, I just had a quick look on the map. There's about a half a kilometer walk up a hill from the bus to this site. Also, obvious proximity to employment opportunities in the Cove. So that would be one of those questions, I think, with regards to OCP and this proposed use here.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Martin, were you hoping I was going to answer that question here, or are you just adding it to the list?
Sure. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Sure, go ahead if you want to answer, Cam.
Okay, well, thank you. As far as access to your first question, I think, was why there, and it happens to be a property that I own. It's the only one I have control over, and so I'm quite focused on that. As far as suitability to the neighborhood, I think we're working extremely hard to not impact the neighborhood. But to say that there'd be no impact would be disingenuous. But we're really trying to mitigate the impacts to the neighborhood. Part of that, and it relates to your question or concern about access to the bus, is the public trail that we're hoping to provide from West Side Road to Adams Road, and that would be a shorter distance to the bus. It does cross two properties, ours if we get the go-ahead to do so, and Lot 7 as well. But that reduces the distance to transit significantly.
Okay, thanks, Cam.
If I may, so I was thinking more from perspective of potential future residents of the development, presuming that they would be employed in the Cove. It still seems like there is a little bit of a misalignment with the OCP intent. Now that may change, but
I think that's fair, and I mean, for that exact reason, we're seeking an amendment to the OCP.
Yeah. And I think that is part of the reason why the OCP is being reviewed, because a lot of things have changed on the island, and the Cove is pretty built out. And I think there is a recognition by many people that there needs to be not just one center on the island where everything happens. So we'll see whether that's included in the OCP or not.
Yeah,
Brenda.
that would be valuable, because I think there's a lot of instability in the rental market on Bowen Island with people being displaced with home sales, etc. So, I think there's definitely room in our community for this sort of development. I'm not sure about the location. That's all.
Brenda?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering if, maybe one of our recommendations should be for council to give consideration to referring the application to the OCP Review Committee during its deliberations. And Daniel, question for you about has anything been provided to the OCP Review Committee regarding this proposal?
This was referred to the OCP steering committee for information.
Okay.
It didn't go to their meeting yesterday, but it'll go to their one in December.
Thank you.
That's great. Because I think this is it's a creative change that may be approved, may not, but it's a creative change that will impact a lot of the island and things going forward. And I think it's something that the OCP needs to think about, because the OCP is being so wildly against trailers and anything that's mobile for so long. Richard, you.
Just relating to the topic of trails that Cam just brought up, a connecting trail to Adams Road. Maybe someone can help refresh my memory, but when we were discussing trails on Lot 7 last meeting, did we not think that it was a bad idea to encourage more people via trails into a highly sensitive, grounds discharge area, watershed, basically?
Yes.
I know that Lot 7 had a greater proportion of the lot identified as critically sensitive, but we really were trying to discourage people from accessing trails in that area, I think was one of our recommendations.
Sarah, can you add that in the impact of the trail through Lot 7?
And Cam, would the trail that you're proposing intersect with Lot 7 then and cross through to Adams Road?
Yes, it would. And Richard, I don't want to be in the position of correcting you, but I attended that very same meeting just to witness it. And I think there was lots of discussion about trails on Lot 7, and that maybe the full gamut of trails was not desirable. But an access, my understanding of it was an access trail from West Side Road to Adams Road was enthusiastically embraced.
Okay.
That might just be my take.
Yeah, it's not clear in my mind. I'd have to go back and
fair.
And I think that hopefully this will be one of the things that we can see when we go on a site visit, because a lot of these questions might, when you're looking at a map and topographical stuff, it doesn't really show up well. We can see it for ourselves. So, but I think that is going to then be one of our things that we want to look into for Sarah to keep track of. And somebody had some question earlier about having this many people in a neighborhood, and I know Cam has talked about what he's done to talk to the neighbors about it, and I'm sure some are for and some are against. But who was that who had a
Well, that was Margaret
you?
Underhill and Brian Buckingham brought that up in there.
But one of us, I thought, had brought it up early on.
I talked about an inequity issue.
Oh, maybe it was you, Richard. Yeah.
I thought maybe Betty had something to say.
Yeah, I also was concerned about, the intention of that early covenant to, they thought that it was going to create or stabilize that rural residential environment by limiting the density because it limited any further subdivision. And this is not a subdivision, but it is the density that they were trying to avoid.
Yeah, so maybe the issue would be, consideration of earlier covenant that I think Margaret had identified in her materials.
Thank you.
Okay.
And my other question.
Or maybe Sarah, can you separate that? Because I think there's the covenant that was in place that's I think one issue, and then there's
the impact,
impact, but they're sort of separate issues.
Yeah,
in my
agreed.
mind.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Great.
And then I think the other thing I put on the table earlier was just that question of it's really a business model, and is this an acceptable business plan under that zoning?
Or well, that's part of the new zoning that they're requesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
they need to do the business part, not just the land density part.
Okay.
We've got a fairly even number of questions there. Was there a third section you wanted to?
Yeah.
And then I can, once we're done this third section, I'll put all this together tomorrow and I can email it to the group, and you can continue to add to it as you see fit.
Okay, well, what I had as the third sort of section of it is the style and type of development. Style and type of development, which was sort of not allowed in the current OCP, and which is rental trailers. Sorry, lots of noise in the background, and I think a big sort of elephant for some people is to get over that, and so that's kind of what I was getting at with my sort of style and type of development question. I don't have any problem with it, but I know there are some people have a huge problem. Okay.
Would this one maybe fit there?
I wonder if is the issue that this is tiny homes. It's providing it's providing residential accommodation, but mobile home parks, whatever the terminology was, kind of suggests a holiday campground, and I think, that, and I think they are distinct, but in my opinion, the restriction in the zoning bylaw for mobile home parks would not permit this development. But I think that there could easily be a bylaw amendment to allow it for this particular development if we went that way.
I think it's manufactured home parks, not mobile home parks.
Yeah, whichever one it is. But I think the the intent is. I mean,
I think I can speak to this.
The type of construction. I think it's about the use, right, as a sort of recreation ground, as opposed to a dwelling, as opposed to living accommodation. Sorry, Martin.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I started to interrupt, but I think I can speak to this. I have quite a lot of experience with modular building construction, and I'm aware of numerous houses on Bowen that are modular. modular construction essentially means that it is a volumetric unit that's manufactured in a factory as opposed to on site. But in practice, these appear like a normal house, essentially. So one example of this would be the homes above hole 9 on at the golf course. Those are all modular. There are several other locations with such homes here on Bowen as well. And then, obviously this is utilized for large building projects as well. There are examples of that in Vancouver for social housing development by BC Housing mostly. Not having seen the architecture of this particular submission, I'm not exactly sure that that is the case, but I believe that would be the intent here. Again, maybe the proponent can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll just say something, isn't that the difference between the modular homes that we already have on the island and these modular homes is that these could be moved. These are movable homes as opposed to here forever. Is that?
So, Kirsty, I'm not certain that that's correct, but we're kind of splitting hairs here. Just about any home can be moved. These smaller units are much easier to move. They're built in a factory and transported to Bowen Island. So absolutely, they're movable. And I have said a number of times that the residents that live there could, if they choose to, when they decide to leave, take the home with them. That's not a small undertaking. That's a huge crane and a truck and pilot cars, and it would cost quite a bit. It's possible, but it's probably also possible to move your house or my house, or it's possible to move almost any house. And more likely what would happen is when somebody decides to leave, they would sell the house in place. So that's sort of one part of it, just sort of the transportability of it. It's not forbidden, but it's unlikely. And I think Richard D was mentioning the sort of, there seems to be a fair bit of confusion, and maybe I can just kind of put things into a couple of boxes. It's not an RV park, which is sort of the vacationing type of use that maybe was referred to. And it's not it absolutely isn't a trailer park or a manufactured home park, which is the definition, because the type of homes are different. Manufactured homes, which people tend to think of as mobile homes, are a different designation. They're built to a different standard. Modular homes are built to the very same standard, the BC Building Code, that applies to all of our homes. And I appreciate Martin pointing out that, yes, Bowen Island has a number of modular homes here already, and they're indistinguishable from other custom homes.
Richard, you?
Yeah, I don't think that the question of whether or not these homes are RVs or mobile homes or built on site or built off site and brought to this development, it's irrelevant. Well, it's not irrelevant, but the bigger issue is that the people living in these homes that own these homes don't own the land that the homes sit on. And I think that is where people draw the parallel between a mobile park, a mobile home park, and what this proponent, what Cam's proposing here. The similarity is that these are leased pads, and that's why it's like a mobile park. Yes, they may be better insulated, better built in accordance with current building requirements, building code, but in essence, it's really the same type of development. in my mind.
So that's fair. There certainly is a similarity, but you might also be surprised to know that that model of housing already exists on Bowen Island. And the example would be the area between Blue Water and Mount Gardner, where there's some water access only properties with crown leases there. So it's leased land where the property owner owns the building. Now, that isn't a similar type of development to what I'm talking about, but the tenure is identical, where you lease the land, whether it's for 99 years or 5 years, and you own the building. And so, like I say, that exists on Bowen, currently exists in many places in BC.
Yeah. No, I hadn't thought about the parallel with a 99-year lease, but yeah.
Betty.
Yeah.
I think I'm sort of in that same zone. I don't know how much work you've done around it, Kim, but I think it would be very important to look at the relationship between the lease agreement and the expectation of the homeowners, especially because there are a ton of legal challenges going on around British Columbia because of disputes where the land is leased and people maybe haven't been able to pay both their lease and their house payments, or the owner of the land didn't give them permission to sell, or all kinds of those sorts of conflicts. So I think to feel comfortable with this model, the lease agreement would have to be part of what we looked at.
Okay, that's a good thing for Sarah to add, is to understand how
both sides get fairness out of it.
Yeah, what happens if people don't pay the rent, or if the house gets repossessed?
Where the protections fall, because obviously the landowner wants to be protected, but you're looking at people who maybe have their whole life savings in that house that they put on land they don't own.
Can you get a mortgage on this type of development? If I wanted to come in and buy one of these places, could I go to a bank and get a traditional mortgage?
Yes. There's a CMHC program that insures these mortgages. There's a small fee. The rates are very competitive. In fact, the rates are virtually the same as for any mortgage.
So they'll mortgage a property even though the homeowner doesn't own the land that the property sits on, or the home sits on. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like I said, insured by a CMHC program, and it is specifically for property on rented land, homes on rented land.
Okay, thanks, Cam.
And would it be appropriate for me to ask Betty a question?
Yeah, sure.
Betty, you raised the question about leases, and there have been lots of questions about that and what the length of these leases ought to be. Honestly, I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Very, very long leases provide comfort to, could provide comfort to my tenants. It also provides comfort to me as the developer, maybe to my lenders as well. And I don't want it to be self-serving, but I'm wondering, you raised the point of the importance of leases. Do you have an opinion on how you think it should go, or you just think it's an important issue to be discussed?
I think it's worth researching. I mean, all of False Creek was on leases that have come up recently, actually. There's tons there's lots on Indigenous lands too, but there are apparently, it's not like I follow it closely, but there are a lot of disputes going on about it, to the point that the real estate industry doesn't really want to deal with those kind of sales. And I think it's worth researching what the issues are and how you set up a lease situation that's fair to both sides.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah. Okay, so that's the type of lease agreement, and maybe Cam, I guess you're going to be on this walk with us. one would hope.
Yes, I'd like to.
And maybe, I don't know, throw some ideas out at the time with the various members of the APC. Talk about it. Richard D.
Well, I'd just like to say that according to CBC, tiny homes were a big topic of discussion at Union of BC Municipalities this year, quite recently, because it creates a better equity between renters and landowners. In other words, if the landowner decides they don't want to rent the land anymore, then in theory, that homeowner can take their home and relocate it somewhere else, and they don't lose everything, right? They've still got their home. Anyway, that I'm not saying that's going to be like a big consideration here, but it was the subject of anyway.
Yeah, I think Cam, I had that
subject.
Or questions. I guess I had assumed that it was tiny homes that could be lifted and moved if the owner and you decided that you wanted to part company. But that's not what you're envisioning, is that?
The answer to that is yes, that absolutely could happen. I expect it will happen rarely or not at all.
And if I may, I can speak to definitely a lot about tiny homes, and modular homes was discussed at UBCM. It's something definitely being looked at by the province to see how that can best be supported in communities.
Great.
Thanks, Alex. I feel like I should also say there's a lot of languages getting tossed around. I have been known a little bit as the tiny house guy, but my plan here has evolved quite a bit, and we've kind of switched from what I thought were tiny homes, and I think most people think tiny homes are something that you can sort of tow behind a truck, although there are other types. We switched from that to modular homes, and like I said, and I think is understood by Daniel and the planning department, is that these, for the purposes of kind of the Bowen Island municipality, these are just houses. The really only difference between any other house and the ones we're proposing is that they're smaller. The fact that we choose to build them in a factory elsewhere is kind of immaterial. They're being built to the building code, and that's kind of what satisfies our building department, or would satisfy our building department. So they're not, I mean, to give them a label of tiny homes, they aren't really. I call them small modular homes, and we're, just a point of clarity.
Okay. Thanks, Cam, for that clarification. Okay, I think, oh, sorry, Brenda, you had one more question, because we probably should move along.
Okay, well, I think during the presentation, Daniel, I thought I heard you say that tenants would construct their homes. And Cam, I wanted to actually do a check-in with you. I went to a presentation that you did up at Belterra, and I thought at that presentation you had indicated that you were planning on selecting maybe 2 or 3 or 4 sort of models of modular home that people who wanted to buy would be able to choose from. So which is it? Like, are tenants going to have a lot of freedom to build what they want, or are there sort of set models of homes that they would choose from?
Sure, great question. I think what I envision happening is that we would make a deal with one particular manufacturer, And I would like to get them to set up show homes on the property, maybe 3 or 4 of them. I think that's what you heard me say at our community forum. And those would, that way people could come and they could see what a 1-bedroom looks like, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom. They could see the different styles, and they might just say, this one's perfect, we'd like to take it. Or they might say, we'd like one that's this size, but could it be styled like the 1-bedroom, and we'd like to position it over there. And that could be ordered, and it sort of takes maybe 3 months for delivery. So I think that is the more accurate thing to say than customers would build the homes on the property.
Okay, great. Okay, Sarah, maybe we can go back to you and we can see what we have, and then as a group we can decide how we go from here.
Audio now. You are viewing
May I ask a question?
Sarah Baxter.
Oh, sure, Alex.
And just on that last point about picking one manufacturer, if somebody already either had a home or wanted to buy a home from a different manufacturer, would they be free to do so, or would they be tied into the specific manufacturer that you have?
Probably not tied in, but there would be some limiting factors. We're anticipating that there's going to be design guidelines, so it won't be a case of just anything goes, but we have a sort of yet to flush out design style that we're sort of referring to as Bowen style, Bowen scale. And we want everything to comply with Fire Smart. So there would be a list of rules that you'd have to comply with. But if you did, you could provide your licensed and approved home from another builder. Yes, you could.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Cam. Now let's go back to the questions and then see if everybody's concerns are addressed. Because I think what we're going to need to do is have Sarah package this up for us and send it to us, and then we will have a while to think about it. We'll probably, Daniel, would it be appropriate to share this printed copy with Cam for some of the answers, or is that inappropriate? I don't know.
I think so. I think we could provide, to ask the applicant if they want to provide any
because I think
that for our next meeting.
You're going to provide some of the answers, and you already have. Some are going to come from Cam, and some are we're going to need to be further addressed.
Yeah, and they'll be in the minutes as well. So
yeah.
it's
so it's public then.
Well, this is on YouTube right now.
Pardon?
We're on YouTube right now.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rusty, I had one other thought. If I could add it to the technical part, there's a fire department. There's a fire access route. The road has fire trucks going down it. The road needs an architect to design it.
Oh, okay. Road access to the modular homes.
Yeah, needs an architect, whereas the homes don't need an architect.
Yeah,
but the
okay,
road
fair
does
enough.
need an architect.
As an architect, I
Or
would
an
say civil engineer.
Engineer, yeah.
Civil engineer.
You can't do that. They won't sign it. It comes in the architectural section. You'd have to have an architect, but in working with working with a civil.
Well,
yeah.
Richard, interestingly, that's something that we've already contemplated. In fact, the trucks and cranes required to get the houses into place require larger turning radiuses than the fire trucks, and that's been contemplated and covered. But it is a very important detail. You're right.
But under the architect's regulation, you would require an architect for that.
Understood.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Betty had her hand up too, I think.
Okay. Betty?
Yeah, I just want to check with Sarah. So I'm thinking in the minutes you captured some of the first things that came up before we started this list. Like,
Yes,
I
I
didn't
did.
want to lose what Richard asked about the sort of equity of that community.
Yes, I definitely have that here.
Okay.
Okay, maybe can you, go through it, Sarah, and
Yeah.
or start at the top, and then we can.
Do you want me to read them, or are you happy to?
I think can we all read them to ourselves
Yeah.
and see if we're missing something?
Okay. Oh, someone's about to start vacuuming here, so I apologize if I'm still at the office.
And just to confirm, we have an opportunity to supplement at our next meeting, I think, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is just I think I see this as us gathering our thoughts, sharing our questions and concerns, and then we'll do the site visit. Some of our questions will be answered. A lot will want to make recommendations about the questions that aren't answered. That's how I see it. Our next meeting will be the recommendations of what we want to make sure happens and what we want answers to, or recommend that council wants answered, should have answered. So, you okay with that, Brenda?
Oh, yes, yes, I am.
Okay. What is the OCP? Oh, okay, sorry. Standing committee. Okay, got it.
Okay, and that's all of them. I think you have a pretty good list here.
Yeah, I think.
And yeah,
Okay,
as I said, I'll distribute that tomorrow for you.
okay, and is everybody comfortable with where we've got to today?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
And thanks. I think it's a truly exciting moment in our APC schedule that we have something that's so different and so creates so many questions. And as we look forward for the island has changed so much in my 70 years, and it'll continue to change. And this is a really sort of a really different opportunity. And so I kind of think it's exciting for us to look at it. So that's just my final comment. Now, how are we going to organize a meeting date? Are you going to do a poll, Sarah?
Yeah, I can
We
send
will
out
poll, I
a
think.
doodle. Yeah, Daniel,
Yeah, I
you
think
go.
next we'll search for a site visit date.
Okay. And I think
which
it
will
would be
have to
really
be a
useful for Cam to be
daytime.
there, and you, Daniel, of course. And who is there anyone else that we as a group think we need?
And I'll just say before the site visit, I'll circulate to we as a municipality don't have a policy on site visits, but we use the Islands Trust one. So I'll just circulate that as well to APC members, so we're clear. Yeah, sort of procedure on a site visit. And like I said, we'll try to find a time that works with the Parks and Trails Committee as well. And it'll likely then end up being, it'll be a daytime site visit, just so we have daylight to visit the site. So we will, that'll be our next time. And then following the site visit, we'll look for a meeting time. And I guess it depends, when we're able to find that site visit. Then we'll look for a meeting date after.
Because several of us work, not me.
Mm-hmm.
And so Brenda does. I know. Is there anyone else available during? Does it have to be a weekend? Is a question for the rest of the committee, or you can.
Nope.
Richard, Martin, you.
I work from home, so
Okay,
depending
you're in
on
the
other
city.
commitments, I could.
Okay. Brenda,
Yeah,
are
I
you in
mean-
the city every day?
No, I'm in the city usually just once, 1 day a week. And so if we were able to organize it, particularly like on a lunch hour, that would work for me. Maybe we could do what we do for these meetings in terms of sending out a doodle poll with a number of different potential dates.
Yes,
And
but we don't have to go to a weekend. That's just what
Yeah. Sure.
Okay,
And then I
great.
can check it against my schedule.
Can we also get a weather forecast with the doodle poll?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to give her a starting point, Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Okay.
unless there's anything else, I guess we're ready to adjourn. Thanks for everyone.
Thanks for answering all the questions, Cam. I think it was very helpful to have you here.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and thanks also to getting the perspective of a couple of neighbors. Thank you to those guests as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see Dawn has sent through a letter I haven't been able to read yet, Betty, but it was a late submission. Well, I guess it's
Yeah, I will,
He has his own opinions.
I'll re-revise the agenda tomorrow and just add it as an information item. I just didn't get time to do it before this.
Sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds
Is anyone
good.
moving and are we moving and seconding?
Yes, who wants to move?
I'll move.
Okay, yeah, Martin and Brenda. Okay. We're done.
Okay, thanks
Okay.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Everyone.
Say goodbye.
Yes, Steve.
Bye.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bye.